Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys and offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by Business First Bank, with locations throughout the state, including 11 offices in the Baton Rouge area, providing personal and commercial banking, treasury management, and wealth solution services to help clients succeed. Business First Bank, banking with greater momentum. And by Short & Associates, legal recruiters in Louisiana and Texas. And Orange Theory Fitness, delivering fitness results for a healthier world.
From Mansurs on the Boulevard in Baton Rouge, we're out to lunch with editor of the Baton Rouge Business Report, Stephanie Regal. It's business Baton Rouge style.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Regal. Welcome to Out to Lunch. In politics, there are the kings, and then there are the king-makers, the political consultants who are the power behind the power. In business, it's really not that different. There are companies, and then there are the consultants, experts, and industry associations who lobby on their behalf, help them shape their image, and guide them through crises with messages that will resonate with an increasingly skeptical public in an increasingly divided time in our country, state, and community. And it might not surprise you to know that women are particularly adept at this. Joining me today are two such powerful women right here in Baton Rouge. One is Camille Conaway, Senior Vice President of Policy and Research at the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. LABI, as it's better known, is the voice of business in Louisiana, representing more than 2,000 employers statewide. And Camille leads public policy analysis, development, and research initiatives across a range of issues that are important to LABI and the community. She began her career as a consultant to the United Nations after graduating with a degree in foreign relations from American University. But she came home to Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina to help rebuild her state. In the 12 years since, she's worked for former Governor Bobby Jindal's administration and SSA Consultants, among others. Camille, welcome to Out to Lunch.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And speaking of SSA Consultants, joining me and Camille here at the table is the co-owner of SSA Consultants, Christel Slaughter. No, Camille, this is not an episode of This Is Your Life. It's an opportunity to talk about the power structure in Baton Rouge. And no one knows that better than Christel, whose firm, which she runs with her husband, Bill Slaughter, is the veritable consulting firm to the stars in Baton Rouge, with a specialty in organizational design, strategic planning, and leadership development. Christel's client list is extensive and includes everything from major public companies to banks, healthcare institutions, universities, governments, and nonprofit organizations. Before embarking on her consulting career, Christel was a management professor at LSU, where she earned her doctorate in systems management. Christel, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to Out to Lunch.
Thank you.
Well, Camille, LABI is a very powerful force in the state. As policy director, do you two tell them what to think, or do they tell you? How does it work exactly?
There's a give and take there. At LABI, we are a trade association. We have over 2,000 members across the state. That's everyone from small restaurants and retail outlets all the way up to multinational major corporations. And our policy process is very much driven by the membership. It's driven by the 40-year history of LABI, where we have traditionally taken stands on issues, and by our members, who get to vote. A one-member, one-vote policy is what we have on our positions, all the way down to specific legislation and where we stand.
And I know that can be tough, because I'm thinking like of the gas tax issue last year that big business was pushing for so much because they need the road. And the small businesses, a lot of them were against it because they've got one or two little delivery vans and said they can't afford it.
You're exactly right.
How do you reconcile something like that?
Well, the diversity of our organization is a strength, and it also can be a challenge. And so when issues like that come along, and the diversity of our membership is split, as an organization, we will inform our members, but not necessarily take a position on that particular issue. So for the gas tax, that's a great example where we did have small businesses that were concerned with the tax burden already and did not want to see an increase, or did not want to see it for the way the current transportation program is funded. And on the other side, we do have large industrial members who need help getting their folks in and out of the plants, getting across the Mississippi River Bridge every day, and they did want it. And so LABI as an organization with that one member, one vote policy voted to maintain no position on that particular issue.
Now, did Christel teach you everything you know?
Or vice versa.
She did teach me a lot. One of the things I absolutely loved about working with Christel at SSA is her sense of optimism, her positivity, and that doing difficult work and challenging work can still be fun, and that we can be a help to people, help them through those challenges. And so I very much appreciated my time working with Christel.
Christel, you are a consultant. A lot of people call themselves a consultant, especially after they've been fired from a job and they hang out a shingle.
Right.
But you're the real deal. What does it take to really be a legitimate consultant?
That's a great question, and there are no barriers to entry to being a consultant. But I did hear that it is the worst thing you can put on your tax return because you're almost sure to be audited once in a 10-year period.
Wow.
So I think that there are some personal ingredients that help someone to be a consultant. They have to be an extremely good listener. They have to be able to put their own biases and judgments aside. They have to be very inquisitive and enjoy digging into something. So a little bit like reporting, I would imagine, in some ways. And then depending upon the project and the client, various skill sets help, understanding strategy if you're doing strategic planning. But I think that certainly having a preparation, I had an academic background, but a lot of our consultants do not, and they have had strong industry backgrounds or a background in a particular line of business that they tend to consult in, and that's very helpful too.
And you got your PhD in systems management. What does that actually mean, and what do you teach people to do? I mean, when you go into an organization, are you teaching them to be more efficient or to make more money or to get along better with each other?
Yes, and it could be all of the above.
Yeah.
Systems management really was on the more quantitative side of the management equation, so it almost bled into industrial engineering. And in those days, we did things like talk about the number of defects you could have in inventory, whereas now there are 0 defects. And so we've come a long way from those early days. But organization design and strategic planning and very, very large macro sorts of organizational assistance goes along with that.
And you'll go into a specific company or into something even like LABI and teach them how to work better.
Yes. And, it's a little bit like being a doctor. I had a new client come to me yesterday, and we spent 2.5 hours. It was sort of like diagnostic work. This is where it hurts. This is what's not working right. And we're so successful. Most of our clients are very successful, and they want to get better. And so it's challenging and fun to work with them as partners to make that happen.
So how do you, and you alluded to this, but how do you work for a client, or Camille, in your case, perhaps a whole industry that you may not agree with philosophically? You take on, I think this is why I never went into public relations. What do you do when you have to be working for the industry or the client's best interest?
Sure, and that's true in public service as well. You may or may not agree with your boss, but you, as an elected official, but it's your job to promote that agenda. And I think we all have personal views and philosophical views that I get to share with my neighbors and my friends and my husband more than he wants to hear it. But we do have a job to do at the end of the day, and it's to make our companies more successful, help our members be successful and effective at achieving their goals. And I think we do a good job of that at LABI. And offline we get to talk about it however we like, and even candidly with them sometimes, which can be really fun as well. But no, I think there's definitely a public and a private face to most issues for people in our line of work and in others.
Yes, and I think that there are certain projects and there are certain times where if you have a serious philosophical disagreement with a client, that you cannot perform well in that engagement. And that's not for everything, but certainly if you're designing a compensation system or performance management and people's ideas about how they want to treat their employees is not what we think is the best way to do things, then that becomes a very difficult type of engagement.
Have you had to walk away from jobs before?
Yes, we have. Yeah. Especially things like big cultural change projects where you may have a leader who has a slightly slanted view of the world and is being manipulative and wants you as the consultant to be sort of
to validate them. Huh?
Yes, and that can be very, very difficult. Try and tolerate it, try and work through it as much as you can, but at some point you just have to say, we're probably not the firm to be working with you right
Interesting. Now. Why do companies actually need consultants?
Well, I think that we're asked that really quite a lot, and oftentimes it's to bring in specialized expertise that they don't have. Sometimes it's a fresh pair of eyes or ears. The client yesterday wanted a fresh pair of eyes, and tried everything, looked at everything. Has two very senior people, just can't quite get them to do what he wants them to do. They're great. He thinks they're wonderful, and so in listening to him between the lines, 2 or 3 ideas came to me about why that might be. And so I think, our larger projects where we bring in a team, a lot of times it's a specialized group of people who are going to sort of do a SWOT approach to organizational problems, and the organization doesn't have the capacity to do that, to work as quickly as they can with outside people. You mentioned efficiency and process improvement. So lots of times it's to save money. The consultant comes in, they're doing the hard part, they're making the recommendations, they're working hard, they get to leave, and everybody else gets to be a hero.
Right.
So it's those darn consultants that came in with these recommendations, and that's fair.
But you have to give them deliverables so that they can see what you're...
Absolutely. Camille and I have a friend who was in state government. He was a department secretary for many years, very well respected and very well known. And every time something hard came up when we were working on a project, he would say, Christel, you have to take the fall on this one. And I would say, why is that? Because you're the consultant, that's why we hired you. So, there's reasons for that.
Camille, you're in charge of policy at LABI. What are the big things on LABI's agenda at the moment?
Well, obviously, with the legislature in session right now, we have a number of bills that we are proactively pushing on behalf of the business community, and a lot of things where we're playing defense. Right now, I think probably one of the most important bills that we've pushed in the last couple of years is on something that most people don't know about. It's a seatbelt issue, and it's a legal issue. And for all of us who know that we have the second highest car insurance rates in the nation in this state, part of the reason is a poor legal framework that really favors the plaintiff in car accident cases and personal injury cases resulting from car accidents. Right now, the jury is not allowed to know whether the person injured in the accident was wearing a seatbelt or not. And state law prohibits that. So you can imagine $1 million judgment for someone who was breaking the law at the time they were in the accident to begin with, because the jury never knew that they weren't actually wearing a seatbelt. And it's the number one way to prevent damage, to prevent injuries and to prevent death is to wear that seatbelt. And so the injuries, Louisiana on average has the same number of car accidents, but very, very high level of bodily injuries and
because
damages from bodily
injuries.
Well, people are wearing their seatbelts, but the damages that they're able to claim in a lawsuit are significantly higher, I believe double the national average. And part of that is the way our legal structure is set up, and the fact that the jury doesn't have all the evidence when they're awarding those damages, and the insurance companies are forced to settle because they know they're not going to be aware of the actual circumstances of that car accident. So LABI is advocating for a bill that would allow the judge the discretion to decide if the evidence of the seatbelt usage should be admitted to a case in a civil trial.
And in other states where they've done this, there's a proven...
Commissioner Donnellan, who approves, and oversees the insurance industry, wrote a letter to the legislature saying this will lower car insurance rates in the state. So it's bottled up right now in a committee. We are encouraging folks to reach out to legislators. There's no reason to have car insurance rates that high, and the legislature can do something about that. So we urge them to do so.
Other issues? I know budget, fiscal reform is so huge.
It is. We are looking at another special session coming up in a few weeks. LABI is tracking very closely the different approaches that the state is looking at. We are advocating for a tax and budget policy that doesn't do any further harm to the economy. We want to encourage economic growth, economic diversification. A strong economy is the way that we're going to get out of this budget deficit, and so we are definitely, encouraging legislators to consider the job situation and the economy as they look at tax and revenue solutions for the budget crisis.
You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Stephanie Riegel. I'm talking to Camille Conaway of LABI and Christel Slaughter of SSA Consultants. We'll be right back after this very short break. You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Stephanie Riegel. I'm talking to Camille Conaway of LABI and Christel Slaughter of SSA Consultants. You all are really in operating in fields dominated by men. LABI is hugely male. Big business and big industry is dominated by males. And Christel, I know most of the powerful organizations that you deal with are run by males. Baton Rouge is an old boys network, and it's controlled by old boys. How do you all function in this realm? Do you see it getting better? What kind of barriers does this present to women?
I see old boy networks all over the country, probably all over the world, in some places even more entrenched.
Worse than here?
Worse than here, absolutely.
Not in third world countries, but in America.
And even in America, yes.
Okay.
And oddly enough, I think that maybe just because I came along in the business world in the late 70s and early 80s, and I was really the token woman in those days, still maybe 2 or 3. Camille and I were in a meeting before this, and, there were some women, but we were definitely a minority. But I think that I learned very quickly how to be able to speak up and make my points, to be very well prepared before I opened my mouth, because I couldn't get away with schmoozing
Making
something
them,
making a gaffe that would come back afterwards. But by working hard and really applying yourself to the organization, whether it's volunteer or policy as LABI or anything else, after a while people would say, oh, put her on the committee, she gets things done. So it was less about gender and more about
Performance.
Performance.
Which is how it should be.
Right, exactly.
I completely agree with what Christel said, and I'm at that interesting intersection of business and politics, which are both so male dominated anywhere, but definitely here in Louisiana. I've been fortunate to have male mentors along the way. I think that makes a huge difference when you have a man ahead of you that puts you in those meetings and gives you that tough assignment and elevates your profile, defers to you to go to a speaking engagement. Those are all things that build up our credibility and our reputation and allow us to really excel. And I think as women, it's also incumbent on us to make sure we're doing the same thing. And even in our work at LABI, we're working very hard to get women involved in our Emerging Leaders Council and at the board. And every year we're adding women. And I think we are seeing that change, but you're seeing it change through a very conscious effort of both women and men to diversify that room and get all those perspectives.
I see in business in particular. I mean, I do see women in law, in policy, in communications really doing very well. But it's so hard for women to, I don't know if they're just not exposed or don't have the resources or the tools or the mentality to make those business deals, to talk to the bankers, to be out on the golf course, to get businesses going. I mean, that's where I really see one of the biggest challenges.
I think that's true, and I think that if you're not getting as many women in the pipeline, there may be female employees, but if you're not getting people who feel comfortable or, like Camille said, have a good mentor who are going to put you in a speaking engagement or in the right meeting or the right situation representing them or their department or wherever, then it is very challenging. And I find even just learning the politics inside of a company and women reading that right and thinking, well, I'm not going to go out to lunch with those guys that go to lunch every day. I'm going to stay here and work because I have things that I have to do, or I'm not going to go out for a beer or a drink afterwards. I'm going to stay here, or I'm going to go home with my family. And they miss some of the political opportunities, quite honestly, that really do propel people ahead.
But it's hard to go out and drink with the guys. I mean, at least until you get to be old, and then you can get away. But when you're 30, you can't. I mean, because it just doesn't work.
Well,
it really doesn't.
And I think we just have to be more strategic about it. I have 2 young kids. I've got to be home at a certain time.
Yeah.
I've got to put dinner on the table. My husband works nights, but I can have breakfast. I can have a coffee meeting. I can go grab an early drink. I can there are ways that I can reach out to those guys that I know are going out at night and talking that. But I can make sure that I get to know what I need to know, another way. And I think it's an extra step we have to take, but it can be done.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears for a moment away from business. This is a part of the show we call Another Great Idea. So maybe you've got a friend who's always got a great idea for you. They tell you about a job to apply for, or that cup of coffee you should have with somebody. Maybe you jump on the advice and it turns out well. Maybe it turns out to be a bomb. Maybe you don't take the advice and you wish you had. Can you all think of an example like that? And how did it turn out for you?
So there are so many great examples of things that turned out well and things that maybe didn't turn out so well, or I think it's the road less taken. It's the one where I really should have pursued that at the time and I didn't. But I think what comes to mind, and I was just with this person earlier this morning, is when Maura Donahue with Donahue Favreau pulled me aside after a meeting one day and said, "You've got to get involved with the U.S. Chamber. I want you to get involved with it. I want you to be part of the, incoming group, same sort of thing. We're actively looking for women business owners, et cetera." And I thought, that's the last thing I need is, number one more volunteer activity, and number two, another Chamber of Commerce type of thing. And after about 3 or 4 years, I am now the incoming chair of the U.S. Small Business Council, and they have a new leader who's, one of the military academy graduates and has such great ideas, worked with the Small Business Administration under a prior administration, and between he and his assistant, they are just changing the face of what small business is going to be able to do in the country from a policy perspective, from an actual tools and techniques, and it is so exciting to be part of that. It's so exciting to meet some of these young women, entrepreneurs, that they are able to get to come to the summit and learn about, what they can do with their ideas and their businesses. It's
huge accomplishment. What about you, Camille? The advice not taken, or the advice that
the advice not
propelled
taken,
you
and
to...
I'm glad I didn't take it.
Okay.
And I've kind of flipped it. So I was told many times in the early stages of my career that I need to have a 5-year plan. I need to know where I'm going. I need to have my ideal job at the end of a road, and I need to be taking steps along that road. My road has gone all over the place and back. It's looped back and forth on itself. It left the state, it came back. If I could have predicted that, I probably would have predicted something very different and missed a ton of opportunities along the way. So I'm a firm believer in risk-taking, seizing the moment, following the path where it takes you, and not setting a 5-year plan. So that's advice that I typically give younger women, especially in their careers.
Not setting the 5-year plan.
Don't set the 5-year plan.
Set maybe a 1-year plan? Or
maybe
no plan at all?
Maybe a 1-year plan, but I think look for those opportunities when a window will open when it's supposed to. If a door closes, don't push it. Just follow that path, take some risks, and let opportunity take you where it will.
I love that.
And I want to give Camille some feedback. I've never told this to Camille before, and obviously we're close and have known one another for years. But what you just said made me think about this. You have the most wonderful reputation. It's just you're nothing without your reputation. Once you lose it, you can never get it back. And it is because when you say you're going to do something, you really do it. And she blocks that time. Having worked with her closely on all different sorts of things, she's very devoted to what she has obligated herself for. I've really learned from her on that. But I do think that you do scan the horizon for opportunities, and but once you choose one, then she really does put herself into it, and it's
What
wonderful.
advice do you give to somebody who really doesn't feel like they have those opportunities when the windows and the doors are closed? What do you do then?
I think we've all found ourselves at that point in different parts of your career or relationships or other parts of life. I think taking things one day at a time, expanding your networks. I mean, there are always things you can do, to open up new relationships and new doors, whether it's through volunteer opportunities, looking to parts of your life where you might not look, to your church network, to your community network. I think to kind of step back and take a bigger picture than just staying in a career silo or a relationship silo, but trying to step back, take stock of things, be very grateful for where you are in that moment, but keep your eyes open for those opportunities.
No, that's great advice. Do you have to go knocking on doors, Christel, still, or prime the pump, or are you so well known that clients come to you and you turn them away?
It's so interesting. We're in such a period of disruption in everything imaginable. And we live and die by our reputation and get a lot of business through referrals. So a company we worked with 20 years ago will call us, after 10 years, and we work with them again and again. That happens. And then they may refer us to a colleague or a business associate of theirs, and we go in and work with them. But recently, we have found out that some of our largest projects right now have come through people searching the web.
Really?
and we are getting inquiries from far and beyond, other states, and being asked to answer RFPs that we've never seen before, and are no list to do that, as well as private organizations. And you have to love things that are serendipitous in life. We got a new client last year. We've been working very hard with them. And at one point, my husband Bill is really the lead consultant there. I said, how did they find us? And he said, I don't really know. And I said, well, I'm going to find out. I asked the CEO, how did you find us? He said, well, that's a good story. He said, I Googled consultants, and you all came up. And I started looking at what you had done and that sort of thing. But then I set up an appointment, and I was with my aunt in another city, and I said, I have to leave. I have to drive to Baton Rouge. I'm meeting a consultant. I think I want to bring him into the business. And she said, what do you do? Who are these people? I could have helped you with that decision. I know everybody. And he said, well, it's SSA Consultants. And she said, well, that's exactly who I would have said. And we have worked with her in another situation. So, but it's there is a lot lot of competition.
And I suppose there's
helps.
more competition today than when you got into the field. And hot young
social media,
people that you helped bring up have now gone out and formed their own
Right.
firms and bid against you for deals.
But that sharpens your saw, so it's all good. It's all
Keeps you
good.
on edge.
That's right.
And you work with your husband.
Yes.
And you're still married to him.
Well, last I checked, I was.
So that's okay.
Well,
Advice on working with a spouse?
I think that we could. Camille and I could probably write books on that, and a lot of other women. It is definitely different and interesting. I think that we don't work on all projects together. The advantage we have is that when you come home and you really want somebody that you can just pour your heart out to about your day, you have somebody who really
You're on
does
the same
understand.
page.
That's right. They understand what you're going through. The hard part for me, honestly, is taking a break.
Getting away from it.
Yeah, getting away from it, because I will talk about it all the time. Bill is much better at it than me, so that's a good thing.
Well, Camille Conaway and Christel Slaughter, it's inspiring to see such strong, capable women setting the tone and pulling the strings in the Baton Rouge business community. Thank y'all so much for being with me today on Out to Lunch. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
My guests today on Out to Lunch have been Camille Conaway of LABI and Christel Slaughter of SSA Consultants. The producer of our show is Grant Morris. Our technical producer is Eric Merle. Our associate producer is Peter Raschuti, and our Baton Rouge business consultants are Charlie D'Agostino and Ann Edelman. If you want to know what we all look like, you can find photos from this show on our website, it's batonrouge.la, and on our It's Baton Rouge Facebook page. These photos were taken by Karry Hosford. You can find more of Karry's photos at karryhosford.com. You can hear this show and past episodes of Out to Lunch wherever you get podcasts and at itsbatonrouge.la. Out to Lunch is a production of INO Broadcasting for itsbatonrouge.la and WRKF 89.3 FM. I'm Stephanie Riegel. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to meeting you again next week around the table here at Mansurs for more business Baton Rouge style on Out to Lunch.
Out to Lunch is recorded live over lunch at Mansurs on the Boulevard in Baton Rouge. Mansurs is open for lunch daily from 11 to 2, for dinner nightly, and for brunch on Saturdays and Sundays. Mitchell Foreman wrote and performs all the music on Out to Lunch. Mitchell's music is available wherever great jazz is sold or streamed, and at mitchellforeman.com. Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys and offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by Business First Bank, with locations throughout the state, including 11 offices in the Baton Rouge area, providing personal and commercial banking, treasury management, and wealth solution services to help clients succeed. Business First Bank, banking with greater momentum. And by Short & Associates, legal recruiters in Louisiana and Texas. And by Orange Theory Fitness, delivering fitness results for a healthier world.